Hey guys, so this past weekend one of my really good friends got married and I did her makeup for her. It was such an honor and I had so much fun pulling together the products and creating a look for her, and a lot of you guys said that you would be interested in seeing me recreate that look on myself, so that's what we're going to do today. This is the final look. As you can see, we kept the look very soft and light and natural because that was really her makeup style. On a day-to-day basis she doesn't really wear a whole lot of makeup and we wanted to keep it kind of true to her personality. So we kept it very soft, light, feminine, didn't go super deep or dramatic or sultry or anything. Also, the wedding was an outdoor wedding in Georgia in June, so it was very hot and humid, and so I wanted to make sure the products that I used were going to hold up well in the heat. Those were kind of the main things that I kept in mind, and this is the look that we ended up with. So if you want to see how I got this look, let's go ahead and hop into the video. So I actually started with the eye makeup just in case there was any fallout. I didn't want that to mess up the foundation, but I did start with a face primer, and I used the Smashbox Vitamin Glow face primer. This is a great, just kind of all-purpose primer. I used about that much and kind of mainly focused it in the pore areas, but I spread it all across the face. And this is a good hydrating primer. It's also a little bit smoothing, and I just find that my makeup always looks a little bit more perfected whenever I use this primer. As far as sunscreen goes, a lot of makeup artists will probably tell you to just skip sunscreen altogether, just because there is always a chance of flashback with sunscreen in photography. But you guys know me, I'm always team sunscreen, and I was doing a little bit of research on this, and I think the main culprit when it comes to flashback is going to be mineral sunscreens. So if you can, I would recommend just using a chemical sunscreen if you have one that you like. A good one would be maybe like the e.l.f. Holy Hydration, the Milani SPF BFF primer would be a good one. There's a lot of great chemical sunscreens. I can link a video below that I did last year on a bunch of chemical sunscreens. The active ingredients that you'll want to look out for are zinc oxide and titanium dioxide. Those are in mineral sunscreens, and I believe those are the ones that are more likely to potentially cause a flashback. On my skin, for the purposes of today's video, I'm just going to go ahead and use a mineral sunscreen because my skin doesn't really tolerate chemical sunscreens anymore. So I'm just going to go in with my Everyday by Unsun mineral tinted sunscreen with SPF 30. I can't bring myself to skip sunscreen. So I do like to apply sunscreen on top of primer, and you just want to make sure that you give the sunscreen at least like 10 minutes to sink in and set on your skin before you apply the rest of your makeup. All right, so getting into the eye makeup now, I started out with some eyeshadow primer, just used the Urban Decay Primer Potion. Just a very small amount of that is all you need, and I just tap it out with a finger. And then, as I always like to do, just to help my shadows blend a little bit better, I like to just take some face powder or just a skin tone colored matte eyeshadow also will work. But the face powder that I used was the CoverGirl Clean Fresh, and this we'll also be using again later for the face. This is my favorite powder. And I just take that from basically the crease up to set that eyeshadow primer in place. I don't really put it on my lid because I just like for my lid to stay a little bit tacky because it grips onto shimmers a little bit better. So for the eye look, I was extra and I dipped into 3 different palettes. You definitely don't have to dip into 3 different palettes, but that's just what I did because I have a lot of shades within these that I just really like. So the first palette that I used was the Ather Beauty Rose Quartz palette, and I actually only used 1 shade in here, but in my opinion this is just the most perfect transition shade for fair skin. And also, my friend that I did the makeup on has a very similar skin tone to mine. I would say she's a little bit more cool toned than I am, and maybe just a teeny bit more fair, but like all of my base products worked well on her, so I didn't have to adjust any of the shades or anything. So the first thing I did was I dipped into this shade called Sandstone. It's a very light matte beige, and I really like that this one kind of leans a little bit pinkish, because as you'll see, this look is going to be kind of like a very soft, rosy look. So I started with that and just kind of buffed it and blew it out all through the crease. I am going to hit pan on this shadow any day now. I keep thinking today's the day, and it just keeps going. So I guess these are kind of deep pans. And remember that because I haven't done any of my foundation or concealer yet, I'm not being too meticulous about the placement of the eyeshadow. Like if it gets a little bit too far out here, it's no big deal because we're just going to clean it up later. That's the other really nice thing about doing eyeshadow first. Honestly, lately, whenever I can remember, I've just been doing my eyeshadow first because It really is so much easier and less messy. So the next palette that I dipped into was the new Urban Decay Naked Sin mini palette. Really just because this palette has a lot of great, like, soft, light, rosy tones. But the next shade I dipped into was Boring here, which is really just kind of like one shade deeper than that sandstone color that's already in the crease. And this I kind of just targeted more into the crease. And I also used this as the outer corner shade. And this is actually the deepest matte color that I used on her. So I just kind of used that crease brush to build it up a little bit in the outer corner. These are not the exact brushes that I used. I pretty much used all of my BK Beauty brushes on her because those are like my nicest quality brushes, but those are all currently dirty. I still need to wash them, so I'm just kind of using other brushes that I have, but really just a fluffy crease brush. This is the MOTD Seamless Sheer Blend, which is really good for just kind of laying down a transition shade. And then that slightly smaller brush I was just using was the BH Cosmetics V5, a little bit less fluffy than that MOTD one there. All right, so then I took the shade Sin and just applied that to the lid. Now this is gonna get covered up by the Flower Desert Lights shades that I'm gonna use in a second, but I kind of just wanted to lay down like a soft, pearly shimmer to almost act as a base. I'm not really sure. I mean, you could honestly skip this, but I don't know, that's just what I did. I mean, you could just leave it there if you wanted a very soft, like not overly shimmery bridal look. This would be gorgeous as well, but she did really like these shades in the Flower Desert Lights palette. These were the two that we went with. This one up here is the shade Horizon, and the middle shade down the bottom is called Sahara. Those are the two that we went with. So there's what those two shades look like swatched. That's Horizon and that's Sahara. Horizon was a little bit too deep, I think, for her for all over the lid. I think it just would have looked very smoky. So what we did was we put Horizon kind of in the middle of the lid, and I just used my fingers to apply these. So I kind of focused this one on the center and a little bit outward into that outer corner as well. And then we went in with Sahara, which is this really pretty duochrome rose gold shade. Love this color so much. And that we just focused on the inner third of the lid. And this I did kind of allow it to get into the crease a little bit too, because I really like how that just sort of brightens the entire eye and it just kind of lifts everything, and I don't know, there's just something really stunning about that color. So I didn't bring it up all the way to the brow bone, but I did just kind of allow it to blend up into the crease. And these are the kind of shadows that I recommend. These are kind of like cream to powder textured shadows. So I recommend just slowly building these. Like, you definitely don't want to apply too much, because if you do go overboard with these, they can kind of look a little bit wrinkly on your eyelids. So you just want to slowly build until you have it to the desired intensity. And I find that like thin layers is the way to go with these. So that's all for the eyes for now. And I just kind of dust away any fallout with a big brush. So now we can get into the base makeup. So the foundation that I used was the ColourPop Pretty Fresh foundation. I chose this one for a few reasons. Number one, it has good coverage. I didn't want to go full coverage on her because, for one, she already has amazing skin, so she really doesn't have a whole lot to cover, and that's not really her style anyway. This is kind of a medium coverage foundation, but it has a very perfecting look on the skin that I think makes it great for photography. It's really neither dewy nor flat matte. It's kind of somewhere in the middle. I would describe it as almost like a radiant matte, if that makes any sense at all. Kind of like a soft satin finish, but a little bit more matte than dewy, at least to me. And I also chose this because it doesn't have any SPF in it. I do have a couple of foundations with SPF, like the Kosas one I think is also really nice, but that one has sunscreen, so I just wanted to stick to something that I knew wouldn't cause any kind of flashback. And the shade I have in this is the shade Fair 30N, which happened to work really well on her and on myself. So I just took about one pump of that. And I did use a brush on her. I used the BK Beauty 101 brush, which is a really great shape for foundation, but I still need to wash this, so I'm just gonna use a sponge on myself. The other reason I chose this foundation is because I feel like this is just one of those foundations that I think just works for a lot of people with a lot of different skin types. I think she has pretty normal skin, maybe a little bit dry. I know it's not super oily, kind of similar to my skin type, honestly. So I figured, you know, of all my foundations, this is the one that I kind of trusted to work well, regardless of skin type. And of course, as always, I made sure to really blend it down the neck and even onto the ears, the sides of the face, so that there wasn't like a harsh line. And with the foundation, I really just made an effort to apply as small of an amount and like as thin of a layer as possible, because again, I didn't want it to look cakey. And I also feel like in the heat, the less product you can use, the better. So really just strategically focus that foundation on the areas where you do want coverage and just kind of very lightly blend it over the other parts of the face, especially if there's a part of the face where things tend to break up and you don't really have anything to cover in that area. You can just apply a really thin layer. And that way, if the foundation does break up at all, it's not going to be super obvious. So the concealer that I used was the Urban Decay Stay Naked Concealer. I have the mini of this in the shade 20CP. To me, this is kind of like the concealer version of the ColourPop Pretty Fresh foundation. Similar kind of finish on the skin, very perfecting. This is a good medium, like high medium coverage concealer. And honestly, the more I've used this, the more I've fallen in love with it. Like I am really, really loving this concealer. Another thing I love about it is that it's very lightweight. So even though it does have good coverage, it's not going to look thick or it's not going to crease really badly on your under eyes. It almost, I wouldn't call it a self-setting concealer, but it does, I would say it sets itself like 50%. Like I still like to use a setting powder over it, but I really like how it's not super dewy. I feel like it's about the same amount of coverage as the Kosas concealer, but it's a little bit less dewy than that one. So I just think it makes a great one for wedding makeup, photography, just day-to-day life. It's really nice. For her, I used the BK and Angie Hot and Flashy A506 brush for concealer. Whenever I'm doing someone else's makeup, I do prefer to use brushes. The only like cream cheek product that I used on her was the Charlotte Tilbury Hollywood Flawless Filter. I used this as a highlighter, just kind of on the cheekbones. And I did end up applying a powder highlighter on top, so I'm not really even sure how necessary this was, but I don't know. I just felt like using it because it is kind of one of my like more luxurious products, and I wanted to use my nice makeup on her. So yeah, you could totally leave it there, but once I had powder on, I just felt like I wanted a little bit more glow on her cheeks, so there's that. Then I went in with powder, and like I said, I used the CoverGirl Clean Fresh pressed powder in the shade Fair. This is the best pressed powder, it really is. It's very smoothing, blurring, perfecting, plays really well with literally any foundation, any concealer. It's a great powder. So I took just a small amount of that on the under eyes, just to keep it in place and to keep it from creasing. And then I just did a light dusting of that all over the face as well. So the bronzer that I used was none other than the Charlotte Tilbury Airbrush Bronzer. I chose this for a few reasons. Number one, it's just a really flattering tone for fair skin. I have the shade Fair. It's completely matte, so I just find that that's a little bit better for, you know, photography. You don't have to worry about it kind of accentuating any texture or anything. It always looks good. Blends beautifully. This is my favorite bronzer in my collection. So I kind of just applied that to right above the hollows of the cheeks, right there. And of course the forehead as well. So then the blush that I used, I went with the Essence, the blush in the shade Befitting, because this is just a gorgeous neutral blush. I felt like it went really well with the eye look. I also brought the Flower blush in the shade Sweet Pea. This is actually the one I used on myself. Which, by the way, I did post a tutorial of the makeup I wore as a bridesmaid on my Patreon if you're interested, but that's what I used on myself. I went with the Essence one on her just because it's a little bit more neutral, and I don't know, there's just something about this that like, it looks like a great bridal color to me. So, and I really just focused this on, it's kind of, I overlapped it a little bit with the bronzer and I just applied it like right above that and really focused it just in this area. I didn't want to bring it too close to the center of the face. You guys know I do typically on like a day-to-day basis, I like to take my blush over the nose, but for this look, I kept it very much in this region, kind of the traditional area to apply blush because I felt like that would probably look best in photos. I love how I used like a $56 bronzer and then a $3 blush. But hey, a good blush is a good blush. So I did decide to go in with the powder highlight as well because I wanted a little more glow there. So I went with the Estate Baked Highlighter in Lit. Guys, this is such an underrated gem. No one talks about this brand or this product, but this is such a stunning highlighter. I mean, you'll see. Just watch. And this is my favorite highlighter brush, by the way. This is the one I used on her. It's the e.l.f. Precision Feather Light Highlighting Brush. It's just the perfect, like, kind of diffused highlighter. It never makes you look like you have a stripe on your face. And with highlighter, I like to keep this really from here up. I don't like to bring it too far into the middle of the face because it can kind of accentuate pores and texture. So I really just keep it kind of up here in this area. And I blend it up to the temples. And do you see how stunning that is? Just gorgeous. It looks so natural. It's not glittery, it's not chunky, but it still packs a really nice punch in a very subtle, flattering way. I didn't apply any to the nose or anything, just stuck to the cheekbones. I was definitely more conservative with my application of blush and highlighter than I am in real life. Like in real life, I do like to take a little bit of highlighter on my nose. Cupid's bow, I like to go ham with blush, but for this, I wanted to keep it very soft, subtle, didn't want to go overboard, which let's be real, I sometimes do go overboard with blush, okay? I will be the first to admit. All right, so the next thing I did was brows, and for me, I'm gonna use my Urban Decay Brow Blade. For her, we used her own products that matched her brows. For her brows, we used I believe it was a L'Oreal retractable, like skinny pencil, I don't know the name of it, and then an ABH tinted brow gel, both of which were like a kind of dark brown color. But really for her brows, I just made a point to kind of just fill in her existing brows. Once again, we were going for a very natural look, so I didn't do anything too crazy with her brows, just kind of followed the natural shape of them and then finished it off with some brow gel. Okay, so then to put the finishing touches on the eye look, I'm just gonna do a little bit more blending here to make sure everything is looking nice and seamless. Like I said, very simple eye look, but it looked so good on her, and it stayed looking really good on her the whole night. So next thing was mascara, and I just had her apply her mascara herself. I'm kind of scared to put mascara on other people, and she just used her own mascara. I believe it was the e.l.f. Lash It Loud mascara. We didn't do any false lashes. She didn't really want false lashes. I also am kind of team no false lashes, just because it's just lower maintenance, especially when it's so hot outside. So I'm just gonna go ahead and apply my own mascara here. This is the Urban Decay Lash Freak. This is the one that I wore because this is my longest wearing mascara that I have. This one doesn't really smudge on me. Oh, and then I almost forgot, but I did apply a little bit of that shade Boring from the Naked Sin palette on her lower lash line. Just a very, very small amount to give a little bit of definition, because I think we did skip mascara on the lower lashes. For setting spray, we used the Urban Decay All Nighter Classic. It's just the industry standard, I think, for long wearing makeup. And that I did before mascara, by the way, but today I forgot. I do feel like this just helps kind of lock the makeup in place. I do feel like it helps extend the wear time a little bit, especially when there's heat and humidity involved, potential sweating. I do think it helps. Apply a little bit of my clear brow gel here. We used a tinted one on her, but everyone's brow routine is so individual. This is the Pacifica Highest Def Clear Brow Gel. I actually don't recommend this. It's really not that great in terms of hold. I'm curious to try the NYX Thick It Stick It one because I've heard that one's really good. But yeah, okay. So then finally, the last thing was, of course, the lips. We went with a nice, like, soft, light pinky nude color, and I, of course, used one of my Kokie lip liners. This is the shade Warm Nude, and this I just used to softly outline her lips. This is the longest wearing lip liner I have ever used. It really does lock into place. I always like to kind of blend over that with a finger. And then the lipstick we used was the BK Beauty lipstick in the shade Acceptance. I brought a few options for lipstick, and this is the one that she chose. It's just a great light, neutral, pink nude color. Went great with the eye look. And this is such a comfortable lipstick formula. It's so creamy. It feels like a lip balm, but it wears well, especially with that Kokie lip liner underneath. And it's also the type of lip color that's going to fade gracefully. It's not going to fade in a really patchy or dry looking way. And with the lipstick and lip liner, we did make sure to keep these kind of in her emergency bag for easy reapplication. And that is the completed look. That's the makeup look that I did on my friend for her wedding. I thought it looked absolutely stunning on her, and the products also held up really well. I also think that between the Smashbox primer, the foundation, that CoverGirl powder, and the all-nighter setting spray, it was a really good, solid, pretty budge-proof base look. I know with it being wedding season, a lot of people are getting married this summer or just this year in general. So I hope this video was helpful. I'll leave everything I used linked down below. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel if you've not already, and hopefully I will talk to you again very soon in my next video. Bye!